Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Decryption and I hope you are well. So my game world is forever being worked on and it's going to take a long time to get to where we want, but that's okay. Building all the framework systems we need for it at the moment is going to be key for us to expand the game. So recently we've done stuff like making the doors that open interiors. That's a huge optimization technique because if you can see I've got 24,000 actors here and removing all the interiors is going to be a huge boost when most of it is singular items as well. So continuing on expanding our world, what I've done is written a very large quest that I want to put into the game. And this quest is going to be expanded over 6 or 7 sub-quests, sure. And we're going to be working towards that until I can finally reveal the story to you and show you everything for the game. That's right, this isn't just a demo world. I am working towards making this into a game, and it's going to take time as well, but that's okay. So one of the things that this quest relies from the long list of things that it needs to have is a follow system. You need the ability to follow people in a quest. Now, we're not talking Assassin's Creed stalker-ish one. We're just talking somebody's telling you to follow them, so you follow them to a location. You see it in all sorts of games like Skyrim, Red Dead Redemption, GTA. There's all sorts. Where a guy walks up to you or you start a quest for whatever reason, you must follow the person. So you start following the person. In some games, they rubber band, so if you get too close, they'll run a bit quicker. In other games, they'll just walk with you until you're too far away. So in my quest, I need a task that you can set up where when you begin the quest, you need to follow somebody to a set location and then the quest can continue. Now, just a note, there is a prerequisite to this. I am going to be using my own patrol system here. You should be able to use your own patrol system. It should work okay as long as you can start and stop it, and you should be able to figure out when it finishes as well. So if you've not got a patrol system, please see my video here to show you how to set one up. I will also be using the narrative quest and dialogue framework because there's no point me creating my own quest system if I've already got one. But I will try to explain in parts what you can do if you've got your own quest system. So let's get started. So I'm going to jump over to my existing dev map at the moment, which is one we've set up already as part of the State Trees tutorial series. So if you followed the State Trees tutorial series, you may actually have the same map. But all it basically is this guy here will follow this path around and around. And he'll do it forever, over and over and over again. There's set areas on it where he'll play an animation, or he'll wait, or he'll speak some dialogue and stuff like that. But that's not all important. That's just what he does. The key thing for me is we first need to look at an ability to stop him in his path. Because if we give him a task to go to a location, so we set a waypoint up to make him walk over to this corner, if we get too far away from him, we need a way to stop him in his tracks. So that's what we're going to look at first. So I'm going to come and open up my base NPC, and this is just an NPC that all the other NPCs I have in the game derive off. That's all it is. It's got their movement component on it, and it's got loads of their properties. The next thing I'm going to get is their AI controller. So if I come to their class defaults and search for their controller, I've got this BP AI NPC here. And for now, all I need is my state tree for patrolling. If you followed the series or you've got one like it, whether it's behavior trees or you've got your own custom implementation, that's all okay. But my state tree is really simple. All it does is it goes to the first patrol point that they're assigned to. So if I click on him, you will see he has a patrol point to follow, which is the first one, which is this one right here. And then it runs through a series of checks to see should he wait, should he play dialogue, should he play an animation. Once all of them are complete, they may just skip themselves. It'll get a new patrol point and go back to route. That's it. Super easy. So we need a way to actually stop this. Now, this is something I found out recently, is you can't actually stop a state tree directly, which is odd because you kind of should be able to. But everywhere I've seen online says you have to bypass the logic instead of stopping it outright, which is totally okay, that works. So what I'm going to do is inside my NPC, I'm just going to come and give them a small flag for now. And eventually I do need to tidy all this up with a nice NPC profile asset. But for now, I'm just going to come and give them a tag. NPC is paused. That's all it's going to be. I'm not going to make it visible because it doesn't need to be. And by default, I'll make sure it's false as well, because we want them to not be paused when they first start. And then back on our patrol in here, whether it's your state tree, your custom implementation, or a behavior tree, basically what we need to do is wrap all this logic in a check to say, if it's paused false, do what you need to do. But if it's paused true, then stop. That's what we need to do. For state trees, it's super easy. I'm just going to come and right click on root and add a child sibling, and I will call this is not paused. I will drag this just above my get patrol point, and I will drag the NPC actions and the patrol point inside of it like so. So it comes in, it goes into the root, it checks if it's not paused. At the moment it's doing nothing. Goes to patrol point, does the actions. So on the is not paused, I'm going to add an enter condition. It will be a type of boolean. The boolean will be from my actor, and it will be the NPC is paused, and we will just leave it unticked. So as you can see, this very nice 5.5 state tree update, if the actor's NPC paused is false, do this, which is exactly what we want. But the problem is now, it's going to run this one, go straight here and go back to root. And it's going to be going tick, 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 super fast, going root now, root now, root now, root now, checking it every time. Do we want it checking that as fast as it possibly can? No, not particularly. If an NPC reacts that lightning quick, it's going to feel a bit unfair on the player. So what I am going to do is I'm going to add another child state to the root here, and I will call this is pause. So on this, I will add the same enter condition of a boolean, and it will check the actor and then the is paused, but I'm going to tick it. So you can see if actor is true, paused. So it is paused. And then I'm going to add a task inside of it of delay task, and I'll just set it to 1. So what this is now going to do is if they are paused, it's going to wait 1 second. Then it will check if the actor's paused again and come back again. You can, of course, play with this number to make it more or less. It's up to you. But if you imagine if you were following somebody and idly chatting kind of thing, and they stopped and you didn't notice, you turn around and go, hey, what are you doing? Come on. When they get to you, you're not going to immediately start running. You'll wait for a minute. You've got to think about doing it. It might be lower than 1 second. Set it to whatever you want. But I think 1 second is a lot nicer than potentially 60 times a second of it checking if they're paused, if you're running at 60 frames per second. So let's just try it. And firstly, nothing should change. The guy should still walk around. He should still get to there. He should keep moving. That's it, because I've not done anything. But let's add some test code in before we start on with the task. So I'm just going to come and open my player's pawn. And then just at the bottom, I'll add a debug key of 0 or something. A debug key, if you've never used them before, super simple. It only exists in the editor. If you compile your game, all the debug keys aren't used anymore. They're just not written. They're not coded in. It's really, really useful for testing. And if you ever forget something, it's not a big issue. So in here, what I'm going to do, just for test code, I'm going to get all actors of class, and I'm going to get my NPC, like so. I'll get the first one, because there's only one in my scene. And then from here, I'm actually just going to drag off and get their brain component. So if you're using any of the built-in AI logic, or even some plugins for Unreal, they all use the brain component. That's what drives the NPC. You can tell the brain component to use this state tree, use this behavior tree, use this utility AI thing, either way you want. But it all revolves around the brain component. Of course, if you've got your own custom implementation, you might not be using that. Basically, get the component that's driving the patrol. For me, it's the brain component, so I'm going to do get component by class, and I will go and get the brain component. And the reason I'm using the brain component instead of the state tree component is the brain component's top level. If in the future I ever need to use behavior trees for something, I can, and this logic will still work. And same way if I use utility AI, it should still work. And then from here, I'm just going to drag off and do stop logic like so. And this is going to tell the brain component to basically pause the NPC. However, you'll notice that this isn't going to stop them immediately. It's just going to make it re-go from the top because it stops the current run of it. So what we can also do is I can drag off my NPC and I can now set their is paused like so. And I'm going to set it to true. And one minor thing that I've forgot just right at the part of it is just in here. Make sure you get the AI controller first, just like that. The NPC doesn't have a brain component. Their AI controller has the brain component. That's it. So now if we try it now, if we tap 0, you'll notice that nothing changes. But until they get to the animation and then the cycle continues, now look at him, he's frozen. He's not moving anywhere. And just to prove it still works, if I wait for him to get past that, as he's walking to the wait, and I press 0 now, nothing's happening, he's still walking. But then he will never move from there. Now, this is entirely dependent on how you want your game to work. So this is an interesting one, because we've called stop logic, but it's still running until it gets to the next point. And from what I can gather, it's either a bug or some weird logic to do with it. But basically, this stop logic is telling it to finish your current loop and then go to the next one. Kind of like not running it at all, but it's a really weird one. Technically, I have tried it without that, and it still works the same. But I figured if it was a bug and we keep it in, eventually when Epic patches it, everything should sync up nicely. But it does depend on how you want your game to work. Because at the moment, if we have a really long distance like that, and we click stop, he will walk to the next available point, wait until the loop recycles itself in the state tree, behavior tree, utility AI, and then it will check that it's paused, and then it will just delay itself and not do anything. That will work, and some games you'll see it. They'll like walk to a specific point, then they'll stop. However, you may not want that. You may want them to stop immediately. You're too far away. For example, if my patrol point from here is all the way over there, if you lose them here, you don't want them walking all the way down there before they say, hey, come back. That's a bit far. And of course, you could breakpoint it in, but if you've got a long stretch of road, you might not need to. So there is another thing we can do to either get around the bug, or maybe I'm misunderstanding something, I don't know. And it's super simple. If you just drag off your pawn and get component by class again, we can set their movement mode to tell them to stop walking. So if I get their character movement component, drag up off of this and do set movement mode and to none, that will make them stop immediately. And then because they are stopping and they can't reach their destination, the go-to patrol point will fail, go back up to the route, and then we will hit the paused and continue that route. So if we try it this time and tap 0 straight away, and my character's died, come on, get up, my friend. There we go. You can see he has stopped. That's it. He's just waiting now. Because he's saying, hey, get back here. You've gone too far away. Blah, 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 blah. And there's nothing we can do. So that is the basic code that we're going to set up in our quest task here. So we're going to check for the player's distance. When they're too far away, we're going to call stop logic, set is paused, and set movement mode to none. That's it. You could get away with just setting the movement mode to none. You absolutely could. But then the state tree is forever going to be failing on here, and a failure isn't a great thing to constantly have, because then it might flag up some false errors. So minimum, I would have the paused or an enormous state, something like that, and the set movement mode. Either one. I would have one of them. For a lot of people who were following my AI series, they were having issues where the pawn wasn't stopping at all, even though they had stop logic on it. For a lot of them, I said it was a bug, I couldn't manage to fix it. I suggested doing it this way with a boolean just to say stop and stuff. It works really well. So that's how you, if you need to do it, if you've got the bug where stop logic isn't working, that's how you can do it. So let's crack on with the quest then. So I'm actually going to come and duplicate this entire level because it's got a lot of the logic I want, but I don't want to mess this up for the state tree series. So I'm going to duplicate state trees and I will call it follow quest, and I'll open this one up. So in here we've got a bunch of different ones now, but I can now start to basically clean it up a little. So I don't need a fancy throne sitting there anymore. The patrol points I'm actually going to set to a longer distance, like so. So we properly have to follow them, you know, a Lord of the Rings style away journey. And I can come and delete all of these ones that I don't need anymore. And don't worry about the errors if you're following the same way. So I'll move this one over here a bit. And I'm basically just setting up a simple journey that you will have to follow the NPC. You know, you go up to them, they say, hey, you're the new guy, follow me, I'll show you where to get started, whatever. And then in the main game, that's where we start adding the full quest to it. But as I alluded to at the start, all will be revealed soon, hopefully. So the final thing I'll do is, just because I've cleared up this one over here, I just want to make sure that any nones are emptied, because you don't want to do it. And then back here, it should have a previous, and we'll just clear that off as well. There we go. Finally, I'm going to select all my patrol points, and I'm just going to remove any of the attributes. I don't need them on mine at the moment, so I'll just untick them all like that. So basically, he should just walk the entire length. That's it. So if I try it now, you should see, if I fall down on the floor again, that he is just going to keep walking. I think I've kept a wait delay on some of them. Let's get rid of the wait delay as well. I have, look, yeah. Get rid of the wait time. And now if I try it again, I'm in the air. he should just continue walking. Now, I know he does stop at each one. That is something I'm investigating to figure out a better way. That's down to how Unreal works, really. But you can see he is going to keep just basically walking the full length. That's it. That's his entire job. If I press 0, he will, of course, stop because we've set our debug code up. So how are we going to do this then? So depending on your quest system that you have, chances are you will have a way to create custom objectives or tasks. You kind of need to, otherwise you're going to struggle, really, unless you've got a fully fledged quest system. So in the quest system I've got, narrative, we basically create tasks to go along with it, which will make your objectives work. So I'm going to come into my Blueprints Narratives folder, and I've got a custom tasks folder here. I'm going to right click and I'm going to create narrative task, and I'm just going to call it nt_follow NPC, and I'll open it up. Just to explain it, I will also open up just a random quest I've got here. Narrative's quest system works by a series of states and branches. That's it. So the state is a place where you sit waiting, you know, like a bus journey almost. You stand there, and then you can have multiple branches for all the different aspects in your game, for all the different objectives you may want. And this is how you can create branching quests, because as you can see, these two can branch off completely different quests to this one. You can also join them together if you've got two objectives that meet the same one. You can also add multiple tasks into the same one. It's super simple. So if you think about following an NPC, you technically can't fail it unless you lose them outright. And we can account for that, because what we can also do is, instead of narrative jumping into a branch, you know, connecting up, we can tell it to outright skip this and go straight to another one. In which case, we can add a fail state to it, and that's how you fail the quest. That's the basic logic of narrative, and that's the basic logic of a lot of quest systems. So now that I've said that, hopefully any non-narrative users should still be able to follow. So in the task here, what do we need to do? So I'm going to come and override the begin task quest here. And the first thing we need to do is we need to find the NPC and tell them to start following a specific patrol point, because that's going to be a key part of it. So step 1 will be tell NPC to follow patrol. So this might be an idle NPC, it might be an NPC following another patrol point, but either way we need to change which patrol point they're following. After that, we need to start tracking their distance to the player. So if the player's too far away, we need to call our debug code, but in here, to stop the NPC from moving anymore. A subset of that, 2A, is they can play some dialogue to say, hey, get back here, what you doing, blah, blah, blah. A subset of that, in case you want it, so we'll call it 2B, is if you're too far away to fail, which is easy enough to do because we're already checking the distance. We can just check if it's a little bit more. You may notice I've got some funky comment boxes here. All this is a plugin I'm using called Auto Resize Comments. It's a super nice plugin. So if you select nodes and press C, it will add a comment box, just like Unreal's. But now these ones here aren't being a part of it anymore, and I don't normally have to click it, I'd have to expand it, blah, 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 blah. However, with this Auto Resize one, I just select the extra nodes and tick this little plus icon here. Boom. It automatically resizes. And the cooler thing, as I move the nodes, it resizes too. It's a bit janky when you first start using it, because I swear sometimes I'm clicking the plus and it clicks clear instead. But that aside, it's so nice. Just to be able to go, oh, I've missed something, drag it down, the comment box is still there. Not sponsored, it's just a great plugin I was told about, it's fantastic, but yeah. And then if you're still tracking the player, we need to, on third, say, have they reached their destination? So NPC finished patrol. And then from then, we need to call 3A success. And that's the basic gist of it. It sounds more complicated than it is, but it's really, really simple to do. And it's super easy to adapt this as well, to instead become a follow NPC, to become a stalk NPC, where you can start adding the perception layer into it to see if they've detected you if you're too close. I don't need that in this one, so I'm not going to do it just yet, but that will be coming up because I have some quests for that too. It's also easy to adapt it to a lose the NPC. So instead of tracking the player, if you're too far away, fail, success. If you're too close or the NPC reaches a patrol, fail. It's super easy to adjust. In the past, I probably would have combined it all into one task, but then that makes it a very complicated task with a lot of branches. So a simple code duplication of little bits makes it really easy. Let's first go to the NPC and tell him not to follow anything. So I'm going to come and remove his actor to follow and remove his current patrol. And in theory, he should just now stand there and do nothing because he's not got a patrol point. Yeah, so he's not doing anything. That's good. That's what we want. So the first thing we need to do is tell him to follow that patrol point. So back on our task, I'm going to first get the NPC. So something else to highlight, the narrative quest system technically doesn't exist in the world at runtime. Meaning if I had a variable here for my NPC to follow, which is a variable we need anyway, and I'll set it to a type of BP NPC, I cannot select this NPC in a quest at all. So if I drag off this branch here and add a follow NPC, you will notice I cannot populate that variable because that's not how it works. This quest doesn't exist in this world until it runs. So what we need to do instead is on begin task, get that NPC. Now you can do this in multiple ways. For my game, I'm just happy using get all actors of class with tag for now. And the type will be a BP NPC because that's what all my NPCs are. And the tag I will promote to a variable and I will call it NPC tag to follow. And then I will make this NPC just private because we don't really need to see it anywhere. I'll stick it in a private folder. Basically, this is just confined to this quest. That's it. I will then get the first NPC and I will set that NPC to follow. So we've got a nice tracking of him already. And now back on the quest, you will see I can populate the tag. And the tag will be, whatever tag he's got. And then I will set the two variables here for actor to follow and current patrol point. I am planning to combine it in the future so it's a bit easier, but for the different patrols of having an actor follow you and for them following a patrol point, they are technically different. So I'm going to come off here and do set actor to follow, and then I will also do set current patrol point like so. So he's got somewhere to walk to, which is the first one, and then his current patrol point is going to be the first patrol point he needs to walk to make the state tree work. So how do we plug in which actor he needs to follow? Well, that's going to be a similar thing to what we've just done here. So I'll make some space. I'll replace these links here with the NPC to follow. So we've got a nicer gap. Then after this, I'm going to drag off and do get all actors of class with tag again. And this time I'm going to find the first patrol point. So I'll set it to a type of my BP patrol. The tag I will promote to a variable saying patrol point to follow. And this doesn't technically have to be a specific node at the start. It could be, any of them. You can really make this do anything you want, the closest one they are. Or you could even dynamically spawn this, which is maybe something we look at doing in the future. So we don't have patrol points that go to locations unless you're on the quest. That could be a good one to do. Now that we've got this, I will just get the first patrol point, and then I will promote this to a variable saying PP actor to follow, and that's patrol point actor to follow. And I'll plug that into private. I'll tick private because it doesn't need to be exposed. And now that we've done that, we can successfully plug in this patrol point actor to follow into the two nodes here, like so. And we can plug it in like that. So that is pretty much the first part done. We've now told the NPC to follow this patrol point. But we need to test it because we need to make sure it's working as we go along. So I'm just going to come and create a super basic quest. QB follow NPC test. In the quest graph, I will just drag off of here and do follow NPC. The NPC to follow, his tag, let's have a look. Has he got a fancy tag? He's called Patrolling Guard 1. That'll work for me. So I'll come and paste that into here. And the patrol point to follow, I don't believe this has its own tag, but that's completely okay. We will add a tag to it, saying QB follow NPC test. You can call it anything you want, but I figured if I call it the name of the quest, then if other quests need to use it, they've got the option to as well. Plug that into there like that. Finally, I will just basically start this quest on begin play. So get narrative component, and I will call begin quest. Let's plug all that in and see how this one goes now. So you can see he's immediately started following it because our quest has started. And just to double check that that's what's doing it, if I uncheck the quest and run it again, it just stands perfectly still. So our quest is successfully working now. So the next step we have to do is we actually have to track the distance to the player. Now there's a couple of ways we can do this. We could just use the event tick, which we can specify in the class defaults how often it actually ticks. Or we could use a timer with a recursive function that it just keeps checking. I think for ours, I am just going to use the tick task, but I'm just going to nuke it and just say only run like every half a second instead of every frame. because realistically the player's never going to move from being in range to out of range in a few frames. It'll be okay to wait for half a second. So if you have your own other quest system, you will probably have some sort of ticking event on it, and that's all I'm going to use on mine. Let's line it up with this one. So the first thing I'm going to do is just do a quick distance check. So I'm going to get the player pawn, which is our player, and then I'm going to get our NPC to follow private variable. And then all I'm going to do is drag off and do get distance 2, which should give us a float value between two actors to get the distance, like so. So with this, I can successfully drag off and say, if it's more than, I'll then promote this to a variable, saying dialogue distance, and this will be the distance before the dialogue successfully starts up. So we can plug this into the Boolean here and connect it across. Then if it's true, we can successfully start the dialogue because we've surpassed the dialogue distance. So just for now, I'll add a print statement saying, hey, get back here. Next, if it's false, that means we're still in range, so we don't really have to do anything. However, it'd be nice if we can build in a way where the quest can fail if you're too far away. So what I'm actually going to do is add another variable called fail distance, and I'm going to set it to a float. Then I'm actually going to come and drag these bits here across a little bit like so. And then from the get distance to, I'm just going to drag off and do a greater than again. And then I'm going to add the fail distance first, because chances are your fail distance is going to be greater than the dialogue distance. So if you are 1,000 units away, the fail distance might fail. But if you're only 300 to 500 away, then the dialogue will run. So what this allows us to do is to add another branch here like so. And then if you're fail distance away up here, we can simply come up and say, in a print string for now, failed. However, if it's false, then we haven't surpassed the fail distance. Then we can proceed on to check if we've passed the dialogue distance. So should we play dialogue? And if this is false at this point, then we're completely okay. It means we're in range. So now if we come back to here, and we'll just set some defaults. So for here, we'll say 500. For the fail distance, we'll say, I don't know, 2005. And then back on the quest, we'll just make sure it's got the defaults in it, so it has there. So let's try it now and see what happens. So it's saying, hey, get back here. And you'll see it stopped saying it now. If I back off, it says, hey, get back here, because we've failed, so that's all good. If I leave too far, it goes failed. As you can see, we've now failed because we've got too far away. Obviously, we need to play with the distances. So I think maybe something like that's going to be a good distance. So an easy way to figure out the distance, we'll just come back to the tick task, and we'll just print out the distance to, like so. But just to make it not spam us with things, in the key, I'll just type distance, like so. Because that's going to basically group anything with the same key together. So if I try it now, you see we're 900 away from him. 700, 400, there we go. So I'd say about, how far away? About 1,800 is probably okay to not fail. And then to fail, I'd probably say about 4,000 really. If you're that far away, then you should probably fail. Maybe 3,000, yeah. So I'll come back to here. I'll just adjust the defaults because that works for me. So about 1,800 is the... No, we'll do about 1,400. Then he starts saying, hey, get back here. Fail distance, anything over 3,000, it'll just fail. So we now can remove the prints. And now this is where our debug code comes into hand. So when he says, hey, get back here, we already know what we need to do because we wrote it in here like so. So I'm actually going to come and recreate this in our task. So I'll get the NPC to follow, drag off and get the AI controller. And then from here, I will get component by class, and I'll get their brain component. And then from here, I will just simply go stop logic and connect that to the true. The reason, I'll set to following quest distance. We can also set their is paused, so we know they're paused, like so. And then if you wanted them to stop when they're too far instead of getting to the next stage, you can simply drag off the NPC and do get component by class again, get their character movement, and then simply drag off and do set movement mode to none, like so. So now, if we try it this time, they should successfully stop when we get too far. So he'll get going, we're following him, he's talking, la da da da, we need to do this, we need to do that. If we get too far away, he will stop and say, hey, get back here, that's when we can start the dialogue. If we get too far, it will start printing out failed, failed. There we go, we've failed the quest. So back into our quest here, we need a way to actually make him restart when you get back close again. So what I'm going to do is just drag all this up a little bit, copy it and paste it below. And then over here, instead of stop logic, we will simply drag off and do start logic. and we can connect this up to the false here. And then NPC paused is false. We don't need that ticked anymore. And we can connect it up. And then finally, we can set the movement mode back to walking. Now, this is okay, and this will work. However, most of the time when we're following them, it's going to be spamming this false every second, setting their start logic is paused and movement mode over and over and over and over again. And we don't need it set over and over again. We just need it set once, just the initial tick. And luckily, we've got a Boolean right here that does that exact thing for us. So if we drag in the NPC to follow here and get the is pause, and we can add a branch and connect it up to the false, the Boolean, and then is paused true, then that means this hasn't ran yet, so we can connect the true down to there like that to untick it if you wish. And I'll grab all of this and I'll wrap it in a comment saying player within distance, start walking. Perfect. And we can also do the same thing for this one up here. So if we drag it across a little bit, I'll copy the branch down there, and this time instead of it being NPC paused is true, we're only going to set it to true if it's currently false, like so, because we don't need to reset it every single time. Wrap it in a comment, player too far away, shout them. There we go. And this will be a great way now that we've done that to actually add the dialogue on the end of it so it only plays once and doesn't continuously try to spam it. So I'm going to do that now. I'm just going to add some dead quick dialogue into it. If you don't have a dialogue system, you could just play audio. That works too. For me, the narrative quest system does come with a feature of dialogue. So I'm just going to add some narrative dialogue here, and I'll call it db_follow NPC test. I know it's in the quests folder. This is only temporary. I will move it around outside of the video. In class defaults, I will just add a speaker here of master dialogue, apparently. I will call it whatever I called the guard. What did I call the guard now? Patrolling guard 1. So that should use the tags to find him. I don't need a camera shot. I want it to still be free movement so I can still walk around and I don't need to rotate or stop anybody. Then in here, I'll just set the guard here and I'll drag off and I'll just add some lines of, hey, get back here. And then I could even come in and add some alternative lines if I really wanted to randomize it a little bit and say something like, have I bored you? There we go. Compile and save, and then back on the task, we're just simply going to get the narrative component and start that dialogue. So I'll drag off and do begin dialogue and connect it up. Now I want this to try and be as generic as possible. So what I am actually going to do is promote the dialogue to a class, like so. I'll rename the variable to be dialogue distance to play. But what I am going to do is actually check if this is valid class, like so. Because then if we don't provide dialogue, then we don't need to say anything. And we don't get any errors either. So if it's a valid class, play the dialogue. And I'll wrap it in a comment, play dialogue when far away, only if it exists. There we go. Now if I come back to my quest and just add that dialogue asset, follow NPC test. If we try it now, so he's walking. If we back off, he should stop. Hey, have I bored you? There we go. He successfully told us off. If we get back up close and back off, have I bored you? He should eventually say the other line. Hey, get back here. There we go. And then we can move away even further and it says failed. There we go. It is coming along very nicely now, ladies and gentlemen. You could, of course, expand this and put this in some sort of timer. So every 10 seconds, he'll say something else if you're still far away. You could even add an array of dialogue distances and say, if you're 2,000 away, he says, hey, get back here. If you're 3,000 away, he says, hey, get back. You know, shouts more. You can do anything you want. This is a nice, easy implementation. So now we've told the NPC to follow the patrol. That works. We've tracked the distance to the player, and we've played dialogue, and we've also failed. And then finally, we need to work on the failure part. Because at the moment, all we're doing is printing failure. And that's not going to really fail anything. It's just going to tell the user they failed. So there's a couple of ways we can handle this, because it entirely depends on what your quest is going to be for. So my quest is you need to follow a friend or something like that. Someone you want to stay close to, not get too far away, something like that. And if you do get too far away, then I do want it to fail because you've got really, really far away. But for example, if your primary point is to get far away from them, then this might not work specifically for you. You're going to want to instead flip it over. So if you're trying to create an escape task, for example. So in my case, because narrative quests can only ever have one out like that, like there's not a pass, there's not a fail, but what we can do is tell it to jump straight to another state instead. So if I had a fail state here like that, and just add a description of you lost the NPC, what I can do is come back to my task here, and I can get the narrative component, and I can drag off and do get quest instance, which will basically get this created quest in memory. The class I will promote to a variable, and I'll call it current quest. And then from here, I can do enter state like so. It'll ask me which state I want, and I can drag off the same quest instance and do get state and plug that in. And I can finally promote the ID to a variable called failed quest ID, like so. So with a bit of formatting, let's just make it look a bit neater. I'll rename it to current quest to fail so it makes sense as well. And now what we can do is if I drag all of this over to here a little bit, and then on the true, let's make it generic again. So I'll just drag in the current quest to fail and do is valid and add a branch. So if we've given a valid quest to current quest to fail, then we know we need to fail when you're at a distance. If it's valid, I will connect it to the enter state true, and then we can basically tidy it up a little bit. I'll wrap this in a comment saying fail quest if far away and quest populated, like so. So basically, if we don't give it a quest to fail, it won't do anything. This may not be what you want. You may very well want it to do something else. You may want it to start another quest. You may want it to start the next objective. Either way, but this is a great way to make it fail. So I'm going to drag all of this down a little bit because we need some more space. There we go. So if we test it now, back on our quest, on this task here, I will give the current quest, which is follow NPC quest, and the quest state is the ID of this one. So I'll add it there like so. So just for testing, I've added a small delay just into where it begins the quest because I was getting concerned to why it wasn't popping up to say we started the quest, and it was because we were running the quest before the UI was initialized. So if we successfully start it now, the quest will start. It'll say have I bored you because we're too far away anyway. If we run up close, it will start walking. There we go. If we back off, it will say hey, get back here. If we carry on backing off, it will successfully say failed. The quest has now been failed, look. So how cool is that, ladies and gentlemen? It is coming along very nicely. So now we have successfully made it so you fail if you're too far away. The only thing we have left to do now is when they finish the patrol, we succeed the quest. So now we need a way to tell when he's either finished the patrol or got to a specific patrol point. Because if we did have him get all the way over to here, that might be okay. But the quest may only need us to sneak to this part here. So we want a way where we basically tell the quest, you've received a new patrol point, he's received a new patrol point, and only when it equals a specific patrol point, we can successfully say, hey, we're all good now, we've done it. So what I'm going to do is each time he finds a new patrol point, I'm going to tell the world, the game if you wish, that he's found a new one, and we can check if it's the one we want to complete on. So I'm going to go back to the BP NPC, and I'm going to add an event dispatcher down here, called on new patrol point assign. And what I will do is I will add an input of patrol point, and it'll be a type of BP patrol point, and I can compile and save. And then back on our state tree, where the get new patrol point is here, it's going to use this task to figure out what patrol point it needs to walk to. And it's a semi-decent sized one where it figures out what states they can run. So do they loop forwards, backwards, reverse, stop, whatever. And then it tries to assign a correct task like so. And this does technically mean we can come at any point on here and we can see when you reach this one, just stop. That's what we can say. Or when you reach one, stop. But we don't want to do that. We want to say when you reach a specific one, tell us about it. So the one thing all these have in common, except the stopping, is they all use the function getNextPatrolPoint. Every single one of them in a fashion, but passing in a different argument depending on what you need to do. So what I'm going to do is go into getNextPatrolPoint and ignore all of these horrible prints that I was debugging stuff for. There we go. You can see it comes in, it literally gets the current actor to follow, gets the next patrol point, and goes for it. That's it. So what we can do is just drag this off a little bit, like so. Then I can get the NPC owner, and I can simply call on patrol point assigned, like so. And I can plug this into there, and I can plug it into there, like so. The new patrol point is this patrol point right here, so we can plug it in. And there we go. We're successfully telling the NPC when they've reached a new one now. So how do we actually, in our task, say which patrol point they've arrived at? How do we use it like we want to? So back on the begin task, right at the end, I'm going to drag in our NPC to follow, and I'm going to assign on patrol point assigned, like so. So that automatically creates us an event here. And now we have access to the patrol point here. Now we could just promote it to a variable and say equals equals, but as we discussed earlier, we can't put real-time things in the quest here. It won't let us do it. So we need to do something where we can specifically reference one of these patrol points. Now you could use an actor tag, you could use a gameplay tag, there's loads of ways to do it. So what I'm going to do is say when it gets to say this one, our patrol has finished, that's how we needed to follow him. So I'm going to come here, then I'm just going to add an actor tag here of, what patrol point is this? Has it got a name? No. So we'll just say patrolling guard 1 final point. It can really be called anything you want. And then back on our task up here, we can drag off this and do get tags. And then we can say if it contains, and we can promote this to a variable, and we'll call this final patrol point tag. Then we can successfully increase the progress of the task. So we drag off of here and do add progress. Now you might be thinking, why are we not using complete task? Well, add progress gives us the ability to make him do it multiple times. So if your task is watch the patrol guard 3 times, this will increment 1 at a time, going 1, 2, 3, so you can successfully track him 3 times. I don't think I'm going to do that, but it gives us the option if we need to. So if we jump back to our quest now and populate the final tag, we should now have an almost complete patrol system. So if we run up to him, he will start walking. If we back off, he will stop and tell us to get closer, so we'll walk back up to him. And then when he gets to this one, it will be okay. But then when he gets to this final one, it should successfully complete it. There we go. Quest succeeded. We followed him to the destination, ladies and gentlemen. How cool is that? We now have an ability to create follow tasks in our game. It's relatively simple to create. You can see we haven't got that many things in it. So looping over the variables again, we've got which NPC we need to follow, the patrol path he's meant to follow, when he's supposed to play dialogue, when he's supposed to fail, what dialogue to play, what quest to fail, what state ID to fail, and the final point. We can, of course, tidy this up a bit. So if we come in, we add this to a required property. So we need to know what patrol point, what NPC. We don't really need to know the others, I don't think. We've built all that in nicely, haven't we? So we'll add this dialogue to a dialogue folder, and we can add the other dialogue to it. The fail we'll add to a failure category, and we'll add the other fails into it like so. And the final point, we'll plug that into required as well, just because it is a required one. We need to know when it's done it. The only other thing we'll patch up while we're here is if the fail distance, because it is optional, you don't have to fail it, is greater than 0 and it's in range, because this stops us if we don't want failure, then we can just set it to 0, so it's optional. And then the dialogue distance, again, we'll do the exact same thing. So we'll say, is the dialogue distance more than 0? And then and here means now we should technically have one where we can either call dialogue or we don't have to. And we can also call failure or we don't have to again. It'll just filter down to it and not really need to do anything. So let's test that to make sure we're all good while we're here. So I'm going to come back, and on our task you see we've now got some nice neat folders, failure, dialogue required. So we'll get rid of the dialogue, then we'll get rid of the class, and we'll get rid of the failure, and we'll get rid of the class, and we may as well get rid of the text as well. So basically we've added 3 variables, that's it, just those 3. So if we try it this time, so if we start it now with the minimal ones, we will see that when the quest starts, he's not moving. So how come he's not moving? Well, this is one of the times where the state tree stop logic thing is a little bit confusing, and I don't fully understand it myself, I'll be honest. But basically, because he can't find a patrol point, the stop logic code we've got when he's going to the next patrol point, the stop logic we've got when he's moving to a patrol point here, so it's coming in, it's not finding a valid patrol point, so it's stopping it. that is successfully stopping the AI state tree from running entirely, which is correct because he's got nowhere to move to, and he could be stood there for hours, and we don't want him checking all the time. So an easier fix around this is if we come to the end of all of this, after we've checked if the final patrol point has been reached, we can successfully drag in the NPC to follow afterwards, and we can get their AI controller, and we can basically tell it to begin the logic now. So get component by class, just like we did below, it'll be our brain component, and we'll simply say start AI logic, like so. If the logic is already running, this shouldn't affect anything. You shouldn't notice any differences or anything like that. So we'll just wrap this in a comment, start the AI logic. If you do notice any side effects with it, I would just advise checking if the logic is running in the first place. But we're okay like that because this only runs at the start. But now, back to the test again, we only have set those 3 variables. So which patrol path to follow, which NPC. You should see he will now immediately start walking. If we back off, nothing will happen. He won't stop. And we won't fail either. We can, in theory, get super far away from him. It won't matter until he gets to it. Which is something you may want. Imagine if it's a tutorial or something. And then when he gets to the final one, which is this one, we complete the task. How cool is that, ladies and gentlemen? I think it's really cool. Now, just for the final thing, the task itself is done. So a couple more niceties that we can add to it. So on the task here, if we override the get task description here, this is only something specific to narrative. Yours may have it, but basically, did you see when we were playing it, when the quest started, it just went task description, or it's empty now because I've overridden it. But we can automate that to say what to do. So if I drag off this text and do format, we can change this to follow, and then we can put curly brace name to curly brace. No, I can just put follow name, really. I think that'll be fine. So we add the tag to it, like so. You can, of course, come in and override it. You can also add extras to here, such as don't get too far, or anything you like that you want. So you'll see now, if we start it, he will successfully say follow patrolling guard 1. If we make the tags nicer, that works too, which is really cool. And now if we try it, you should see that once I've customized it, oh, there's our friend, the patrolling guard. Let's go and see what he wants to say.
Oh, you find me here. Okay, come on. I'll show you where we need to start word.
So we're following him. You could have him talking if we really want to. I'm just going to fill it in myself. We can back away and go, actually, I'm getting distracted.
Have I bored you or something?
Has he bored us? Okay, no, let's carry on. We'll go back into it.
And this is it. You start here. Let me know how it goes.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. How cool is that? He will carry on walking down, but we've successfully had a quest where we follow him and he gives us instructions. How cool is that? That is so cool. I'm happy with that. It's a lot easier and more self-contained than the older follow system I've got. It's pretty much just this now. There's no many data tasks. There's no complications to it. It's nice and concise and it works really well. The only changes I've made to do all the voices is I simply promoted the play parameters of my dialogue system, the narrative one, into a variable and populated it. And then on the dialogue, I've just split it up and add different ones. That's it. The main key is I've also made a sphere here that just starts dialogue. But the core concept of the narrative tree here, how cool is that? We can now follow NPCs and create quests to do it. It can be super simple to modify to change it into escape the NPCs, stealthily follow the NPCs, and just rejigging some of the code, you can make it work really nicely. You could probably turn these into functions as well and call them reusably. But yes, thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that was helpful. If you run into any issues, please let me know below. If you're not running narrative quests in dialogue, what are you running? Is it a custom thing, or did you get another one? Let me know below. My name is Decryption. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.